Hello, babes. Welcome back to Coffee and Tequila, the show for people who love stories, where you get a morning show on Mondays and a late show on Fridays.
You stole my line.
Sorry. Except for when we just like completely ignored the show and tell everybody we're going to be back and we don't do it.
And then just push an episode because we were both...
Listen, okay, I apologize deeply. Scotty Bowers, this was supposed to be this past Monday. You're going to get it on a Friday. It makes more sense, you know?
He was a party kind of guy.
It's a Sexcapades episode.
Yes.
Do you really want to listen to that on a Monday morning, go into work? No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
Friday night party makes a lot more sense.
If you would like to listen to it on Monday, just listen to it on Monday.
Lately it's been crazy. Alastair is like starting training. So first Alastair got sick and then it got me sick. And then he is starting training. And so like, it's all your schedule, baby. That's like kind of throwing us out of whack a little bit.
Our next handful of episodes are going to be interesting.
We're maneuvering our whole schedule. We're trying to
but it'll be a very exciting time, I think.
For you. I have to figure out how to do episodes without him, so there's going to be a couple episodes without Alastair. I don't know.
Which is fine. We were eventually going to be able to do stuff like that. So, the sooner the better. That's what I say.
Hey, we're back. That's all that matters. We're back every Monday and Friday. As always, this episode is kindly being sponsored by Helix Sleep, and we'll let you know a little bit more about them a little bit later. But first, what are we doing? What are we sipping today for this late show? We always do a sipper. I hope you guys are having a sipper. Let us know what you're sipping today. What are we sipping, baby?
Well, Scotty Bowers was a notorious teetotaler. And for people who don't know what that is, a teetotaler, with back then's slang, was somebody who didn't very much enjoy drinking alcohol, so they would drink tea instead.
Is that what that word was? I had no idea what that meant. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what it means. And I decided, we'd respect him a little bit, and I made us some tea.
Which is weird because he was a bartender, too.
Well, he was a bartender. Oh, he was a bartender.
So you made just like is it sober tea?
I put some chamomile tea, and you know what?
I don't want to do sober tea.
He was also a bartender, so we got to respect him in that sense too. So just a little bit.
What is that?
Of lemon juice.
Lemon juice. Oh, there better be alcohol coming. Oh, baby.
And a healthy dose of tequila.
There you go. Just a splash of tequila. I don't want that much.
And there you go. We got some tequila toddies.
In The View mugs.
We got some tequila Scottys.
Tequila Scotties.
Oh my
Alastair
gosh.
Just made a new drink, everybody. I hope you're drinking a tequila Scotty with us.
I just thought of that too. It's not even in my notes.
Okay, here you go. Come on, let's cheers to it. What are we cheers? Cheers to the freaking weekend. Scotty Bowers.
Cheers to the weekend. Cheers to, I don't know. I guess sex.
Sex.
Yeah.
Cheers
sex.
to sex.
I guess that's what Scotty would be cheersing to. Sex and tricks.
Yeah. He'd say, now everybody take your clothes off.
He's like, is this not an orgy?
This episode might get a little bit graphic, just so everybody knows. There might be like a trigger warning at some point during it also.
Yes.
And I'll give you guys the trigger warning right before. You can skip forward, whatever. But yeah, after we did our Tab and Tony episodes, everybody was like, oh, you have to cover Scotty Bowers. Do you guys know Full Service, the book Full Service?
We did not.
What about the Scotty Bowers and the Secret History of Hollywood? And everybody was like suggesting it, so we looked it up. And we were like, wait a minute, is this the Ryan Murphy show that we just watched?
Exactly.
And it was.
Because in the first couple of chapters, you're starting to get because it's a whole gas station get up stuff, and which is what you got from the Ryan Murphy Hollywood show, which we liked. We didn't love. We liked it.
It's okay.
I don't know. But it totally made me want to watch it again.
I do want to watch it again because going into it, I had that visual in my head now of the gas station and all that, because that's the legend, right? It's like Scotty Bowers worked at a gas station, and he was basically Hollywood's like best pimp, and he would pimp all of his Marine buddies and all of his friends in Hollywood, and everybody.
He didn't like the term pimp though.
It's okay. We're gonna use the term pimp anyway.
Yeah, well, because he didn't make any money off of his.
He didn't make any. I thought that was interesting, but we'll kind of get into it. So we did buy the book Full Service. We watched the documentary first.
Yes.
And the documentary was interesting. I think the book definitely, if you want more detail, if you want the details and you want all of the salacious stories, the book is the way to go because there wasn't
Yeah.
that many in the documentary.
I think it's almost better. So we watched the documentary, then read the book, or actually we read half the book, then watched the documentary, then finished the book. But I definitely think the book comes after. I mean, the documentary comes after the book,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
and it's
This was like 2012, and the documentary was like 2017, 18, something like that.
and it's much more about his life now and after he's published the book, and him like talking about his life and talking about what giving away all these secrets, these Hollywood secrets
Yeah.
that he's had. And there's also some pretty cool pictures in the documentary.
There's a lot of in the documentary, but there's cool pictures in the book too. But the documentary gives a lot of like just. Scotty Bowers has, I guess, just a trove of sex tapes, like
He has like sex tapes
on film. And
there's nudie pictures.
It just like there was one point in the documentary and it came up and it just said, and the caption was Scotty Bowers at an orgy, and it's just like him like sucking dick, and like the dicks are like kind of like pixelated, but like you can very much tell what's going on, and like you just have this whole sex tape in this documentary, and I was shook. I couldn't believe it.
And some pretty tasteful nudes, I think.
Yeah, Scotty Bowers lived a life though, man. Like he lived. I think Scotty Bowers was somebody who seems like he was very happy with his life and very happy to just live life and enjoy it, and really accepted that things happen in life, and
Yes.
he just roll with the punches and you keep going, right?
He's definitely somebody that you can definitely apply the love is love, and he just wanted to go out and love people
Yeah.
as much as possible, especially physically, but also like he did favors for his friends for asking for nothing in return.
Yeah.
He was a very giving person throughout
a very
what,
giving
what we could tell what we could tell in this book.
Yeah. Not really trippy up that much.
Yes, it did.
These Alastair are a little prudish. The documentary really reminded me of Grey Gardens. I got a lot of Grey Gardens vibes because this guy was like a massive hoarder, like, and he has like 2-3 houses, and so the documentary is just him like bouncing around to all of his different houses, going through like all of his hoarding of just like the past 70, 80 years.
And he had a bunch of. We actually talked about for a second what. This sounds bad, but
Baby, we are doing a Sexcapades episode. Get on the horse.
What the estate sale would be like.
Oh, you just find an accidental like nude of like JFK or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't
just
know.
like
You probably find something.
The actual
there.
like history that was in like all of these, like, because he had 2 houses full of stuff, and then he had a couple of, I want to say connexes, but what are they called?
Storage units.
Storage units full of stuff too. So
And then like a random like his friend's ashes in the trunk of his car that
trunk
was
of his
just sitting in
car.
storage for like ever, and he just decided to go ahead and one day and like spread the ashes in his backyard. It was just freaking wild.
in the hole. In his
It's
porch.
like it feels surreal watching him just like bounce around Hollywood, but we'll kind of get into that. Coming up, we'll cover full service. We'll cover the life of Scotty Bowers, but first, a word from our sponsor. Now it's time to tell you all a little bit about our sponsor for today's episode, Helix Sleep. Helix is a premium mattress and a box company that makes beds to fit your unique sleep style. Helix Sleep is back. We love our Helix mattress. It's one of our favorite things in our house.
our favorite bedfellow, if you will.
Everybody, well, we're talking all about beds today, and so the Helix Sleep makes a lot of sense today. We have had less people in our Helix Sleep mattress, but it can comfortably fit 4 or 5 people, I think.
I would say so.
Should we try it?
I would not say so.
I don't know. Well, yeah, we absolutely love our Helix mattress. We've had it for like 2 years now. We have a king size Helix Midnight Lux mattress, and we also have in storage as part of our hoarding in our storage.
Yes.
Our queen size Midnight Lux mattress.
I mean, with this, it just seems like it's a perfect sponsor for a Scotty Bowers story.
It seems like it, doesn't it?
It does.
Helix knows that everybody is different and everybody has their own unique needs, and so they've made a sleep quiz that'll match you with your perfect mattress based on your needs. I am an all-over sleeper. Alastair is more of a side sleeper. He likes a firm mattress. I like, more medium. We took the quiz together and we got the Midnight mattress. One of the best parts about Helix is that they deliver the mattress right to your door for free. It comes rolled up in a box and is super easy to set up yourself. And if it makes you nervous to buy something online that you haven't tried, Helix has a 100-night sleep trial, so you get more than 3 months to make sure that you absolutely love it. And if you don't, they'll pick it up for you and you'll get a full refund.
If you or somebody you know is in the market for a new mattress and you think that Helix sounds right for you, you can go to helixsleep.com/tequila. You can get up to $200 off of your mattress and
2 free pillows.
what is it that you called this?
A Scotty Toddy.
Scotty Toddy. Oh, I'm a little proud of you, baby, for coming
Thank
up with
you.
it on the spot. Look
I'm
at
a
you.
cocktail sewer.
Caucasour.
cock
Scotty Bowers
screwer?
was a sexcateur. You're a caucasour. Are we drunk already? It was a sip. It was
don't
a
know.
sip. Let's how about we can go
anyways.
into the story of Scotty Bowers. I think that's a good way to go.
So Scotty was a farm boy in Illinois.
Yeah.
Yes, he had to get up and smell the chickens, as they say at the farm. And he had a brother and a mother and a father.
And a sister. Younger
And a
sister.
sister.
Yeah.
And he'd get up and help with farm chores, and he loved going to school.
Like a real farm boy. He was like
Yes.
this, and this is like Scotty Bowers was in his family. Like he was growing up during the Great Depression, so like it was really rough. His way of life, his childhood seemed like really rough because he would wake up really early, go out, tend to the farm animals, to the cows, right before going to school, and then he'd hop on. I found this really funny that he would hop on his pony and like ride to the schoolhouse, and then after school ride back and do more farm chores and homework and.
Well, he did that because kids back then had to get to school in very weird ways.
Oh yeah. Your grandparents and your parents will never
back
let you
in the
forget
day, I
it.
had to get my pony.
I had to. But
During the
he
Great
really
Depression.
said that. That's in this book. He really said I had to hop on the back of my pony and ride down the unpaved road. He said unpaved road to the schoolhouse, and sometimes he would go by his friend's house and they'd hop on the back too. They didn't have a saddle, so they'd just hop on the back of the pony and.
to get me an education.
But life was really. I would have loved a pony. My mom had a pony when she was younger. My papa bought her a pony.
My sister had a horse for a very small amount of time.
Never had a pony. What the hell is that?
I don't know. I feel like it's not a big portion of the population that do ponies now. Especially, I feel like back then, and he was not a wealthy. They were not a wealthy family. Mm-hmm. They were definitely hurting from the Great Depression, just like all of the farms around them were hurting at the time. But really, from the get go, Scotty seems to be like a very positive person.
I think that's the theme that we're going to see is that Scotty
Yeah.
is just positive throughout life, and he always like looks at life in a really positive way, even though like the stuff he's describing is really bleak. Like his upbringing seems really bleak. Like his parents are always fighting because they're like worried about money all the time. They like really can't afford this farm. You know, they're struggling to like keep this farm going. It's really the grandma owns the farm, right? Like,
yes.
And the parents are just living on there and they're working on there, and it seems like everybody in town is the same way. Everybody's struggling for food. Everybody is struggling. It is the Great Depression. So it's like a really bleak childhood, but he still like spins it in a
the
semi-positive
most
way. Not, I wouldn't say the
Almost
most, but
too
like
positive.
yeah. So kind of a trigger warning right here. We're going to kind of talk about like a few of the sexual abuse situations that Scotty went through as a child.
Yes.
So just keep skipping through if this is not something you want to listen to. We're not really going to go into detail. We're just going to kind of touch on it because I think the way he puts it in the book is like notable to talk about. It's notable to talk about the way he puts it in the book. So Scotty and his family have this I don't know, other farm next to a neighbor.
His family friend,
A neighbor. They're called neighbors.
The father of one of his friends. So
Yeah, the father of one of his
man.
friends basically grooms Scotty, and Scotty's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old at this point, and this neighbor guy grooms him and would like walk him home, would like kiss him on the forehead, would like caress his leg, and like different things like that. And then at one point he starts taking him into the shed, and the way Scotty puts it in this is like Scotty says, we were all really aware of sex because we saw farm animals doing it all the time.
Yes.
We saw dogs and cats doing it all the time. Sometimes we would even hear our parents doing it in the next room and like peek in and like look at it and stuff like this. So he was very aware of sex. He knew what that was. Like, like all kids, you show private parts to each other and stuff like that. And then, but the way he like puts this grooming situation is more like a first sexual experience rather than he was taken advantage of and like sexually abused.
Yes, and I think that we're definitely getting his perspective, especially as he's young with this. And it's interesting because one, he was definitely abused, but his mind at the time and his mind when he was writing the book didn't perceive it that way.
He still didn't perceive it that way. Even
Yes.
as he was writing the book, he perceives it as
Like he was a very sweet man. He was
said-
like talking about stuff like that. I would miss him a lot. I could tell he loved me.
And he doesn't say that the guy abused him. He says that it was something that he wanted, and that felt good to him, and that he went along with. And this was something that he wanted, and that he really drives home the point that like I felt no shame, no guilt, no nothing. And I find this really problematic. Not because Scotty should have been feeling guilt or anything like that, but the other guy should have, right?
Yes.
Like, it's not for Scotty to feel guilt, but like he's really driving home that point that like I don't feel guilt about that. I don't feel like shame about that. It didn't make me feel any like bad. Well, it wouldn't make you feel bad, would it? It might like scare other kids and stuff like that, but that doesn't happen to everybody. Sometimes it does feel good, but like that's still you were still sexually abused, and the other man still should have been held accountable. He still did this to you. He groomed you, and Scotty is very much like removing himself from that and saying, "No, that didn't happen to me. It was something that I wanted." But like at 6 or 7 years old, no, that's not something you want. And
it's not something you want, but it's also not something that like for him, I think is still think of it in that mindset instead of like really giving the responsibility to the adult.
I think he takes this another thing throughout this book is like he really does seem to take responsibility for every situation, and he's trying to take responsibility for every situation, even a situation like this where he was sexually abused. He's taking responsibility for it and saying, "No, I wanted this." Because so during the Great Depression, all that, it's really bleak. And the family has to move. Grandma has to sell off all the livestock and has to give portions of the farm to other people in the neighboring area
to work it off for her. So they still own it. But they're like making a portion if somebody else.
They're basically renting parts of their farm to other people. But the family has to move to Chicago. The mom and dad get divorced, and Scotty basically goes out and gets a bunch of jobs at like 10 years old because he
wants to take care of his family.
Well, he has to take care of his family. Like his mom is like kind of reliant on his income so that they can eat. It's a single parent household now.
Well, and he really frames it in a way like, hey, this is the start of my entrepreneurship. This is me. So I went ahead and I took initiative and I started selling paper. And then I was like, hey, if I'm selling the paper, I'm also going to shine some shoes.
Yeah.
And then he keeps on going up from there. And then
so basically, like, he is out all the time, and he's out really late hours, and the mom is not questioning it because he's bringing in money for the family, right? So, like, he has no supervision. He's just out doing what he wants, and he ends up, I'm going to, like, briefly go through this. He just ends up basically being molested by, like, a ring of priests.
Yes.
And being passed around to them, and he also frames this the same way he framed the neighbor story, is that this was something he wanted that felt good to him, and he was getting money for it, and that made him really happy
because the priest would pay him out, more than he would make, doing his normal newspaper rounds, and he'd come back late, and it seemed like, and this sounds maybe a little bit bad, but that he was bringing in enough money that his family didn't want to question it.
Well, of course they wouldn't have questioned it, and they whether they suspected anything or not, they would have. It's money, so like it's whatever. And they need to eat, but. Again, like Scotty's framing this as like, it's something I wanted, that therefore it wasn't anything bad. It's not anything bad that happened, I benefited from it. And it's like, this is all irrelevant. This doesn't matter. You were still molested. You were sexually abused by all of these men who should have been held accountable.
This is also something we encountered if you watch our Tab and Tony episodes.
I saw a lot of parallels in this.
Because it seemed like, especially even back then, the priesthood was really taking advantage of their position over young kids.
Well, sexual abuse at that time was really rampant because nobody was talking about it. And it was so taboo that like sexual abuse, what was sexual abuse at that time? Like nobody was talking about kids being molested, that wasn't something that happened. Everybody put that at the back of their mind. That's something that could never happen. And so something like this, like, I think that that's his dated mindset. That's like really looking at this and looking at this through a lens that it's like, oh, but it's something that I wanted. And it doesn't matter if it's something that you wanted, something that felt good, irrelevant. It was something that they did that they should have been held accountable for. And that was not okay in any shape or form.
No, I definitely agree. But this is also the start of his, I guess, he is reading through his book, he's the most non-judgmental person I've ever probably read.
Sometimes to a fault.
And I think in this place too. But it's a stupid situation that he should have never been in because of them, and because factoring in the fact that he needed to bring money home as a young child, and that extra burden that's put on you, where you're doing things that you don't actually know what what
And
it
he
is.
probably did have like a burden from that, right?
Yeah.
And so then he would go out and he would be sexually satisfied as a youngin, and he would say, this is another like kind of theme that we're going to see, is that he uses sex a lot whenever he's like in a moment of stress or like any moment of distress. He like immediately goes into sex, and like that's a cure for him, right? That's a coping mechanism. And so I could see as a child, as a youngin, that could have been, he could have been associating that in his mind as something that was like a coping mechanism from like the stress of having to come up with this money for his family, right?
The stress of having to come up with the money for the family, but also the stress of, being at home.
And I don't ever, I don't want to like sit here and say, oh, Scotty, those are your views and they're wrong. Those are wrong views. But I do think those views are like insanely problematic because of the way he's framing it as like that's something that like wasn't wrong and that everybody, was consenting to. You cannot consent as a child. You just cannot. And I'm going to like stick with that. And we're going to move on from that.
There should have been some, what is it called? You know how they have the notes at the bottom?
Yeah.
From the actual editor. They said, "Hey,
I can tell in the documentary
this.
that like they don't know what to do with this. Like when he's talking about it and stuff like that, they're like, yeah, like, Scotty. But that was his experience, and nobody can tell him like he can't feel that way, right?
Yes.
But like looking at it from anybody else, if you don't see that that's a problem, there's a problem with you. Scotty does go into the Marines right after Pearl Harbor.
As a paratrooper.
Because
he made like an extra, I think it was like 50 or 60 bucks.
So they're like going in, just going in, like he was going to make about 50 bucks a month.
Extra on top of that. And he always sends money back home. He is the most giving, like we said, person in this book. And he really wanted this so that he could send money back home so that his family, his mom, could be like good and taken care of.
Yeah. And it's during like his time in the Marines that he first goes to Los Angeles. And when he goes to Los Angeles, he's like immediately, again, Scotty's a very sexual guy. And so we're talking about Scotty as an adult now, and his like sex drive is like through the roof. The older he gets, his sex drive just like keeps ramping up. And so he goes to Los Angeles and like immediately gets into the orgy scene. And, like is having orgies with all of these people. And like Scotty like almost immediately is like pretty accepting that he just likes to fuck anybody.
Yes.
Like men, women. Like he doesn't ever have a moment where he's like questioning sexuality or anything. He's like, it's sex, Like I think he was like super forward thinking with that. He does list in the orgy scene, in the sexually liberated scene. There's a bunch of terms that I wrote down that like were really funny to me. So a gay man who was usually out was called a jelly bean. A gay guy who performed fellatio was called on the stem. PTM was Princess Tiny Meat.
For guys with
Little
small
dicks.
penis.
Yeah. A queen was an older gay man, and a Twinkie was a younger gay man. I thought those were pretty funny because we still do twink.
I think gays use a lot of like different terms in terms of like separating people, and I think that he uses some other terms later on in the book too.
Yeah. He also has like a fling, like while he's here in Los Angeles, like on leave, he has a fling with Cary Grant, the actor.
Yes.
This really famous actor, and another actor, Randy Scott, who they were pretty much in a relationship, right?
Yeah, and you see throughout the book that he just has flings with people, and the thing is, like, I don't even know how he has that.
How do you stumble into? I mean, I guess it's Hollywood, right? So like, there's actors everywhere. This is like the golden age of Hollywood too, and so like, there's actors everywhere, and they're all like. The thing about this time period is like everybody was like fucking everything, right? Like sex was everywhere. Everybody wanted sex. Everybody was like super sexually liberated. You just weren't, it was like an open secret, right? So like they were keeping it super hushed because of middle America. But, in Hollywood, everybody knew that everybody was fucking everybody.
And this also started out before the Hays laws, the Hays clause and stuff like that. Because Hollywood itself started out a lot more liberal minded.
Yeah.
Than it seemed like later on after the Hays laws that, cut off a lot of the sex and everything that was on top of it. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the sex left Hollywood.
It never did.
It was just more underground.
It seems like everybody was a lot more sexually liberated during this time too. And then like at some point we just like reverted back and started, really going into the closet.
I think the AIDS epidemic had a lot
that was a
yeah.
big thing. That was a big thing to do with it. But so like while he's in the Marines, he's like I was pretty surprised that he was like in back to back combat. Like he went through a lot of conflicts. was like
He went to Iwo
in
Jima.
battle a lot. There was like a period of like 3 or 4 months, 5 months that he was just like in combat all the time, right? And like in different conflicts.
But which is what you do. He built really close relationships with all his Marine buddies.
Oh, he's talking about them throughout this whole book, and like these are relationships that he like held on to throughout his entire life.
His entire life.
Yeah,
and relationships that really like come to be very good for him.
Yeah.
Later on in the book,
they're like good friendships, right? Good, solid friendships. But it's during one of these combats that his brother dies. This was like so wild to me, and the fact that like he says a lot throughout this book, like, and in the documentary and all that, he's like really pushing the fact that hey, I don't have any trauma. It's okay. I'm okay. Like me being so sexually active is not because I have any trauma, right?
And then he says traumatic.
I do not believe him. I do not believe him, and especially this situation right here. This is the only time he like really cries in the documentary. He's talking about the death of his brother. So he is in combat. His brother is like literally there with him, 1,000 feet away.
Because he's also a Marine, because he joined in because Scotty was a Marine.
And so another soldier comes running over and is telling him, I'm sorry, man, your brother died. And like they were literally 1,000 feet away. He's like, there was a shell that exploded and he was killed by shrapnel. And as this soldier is telling Scotty about the death of his brother, another shell explodes and kills this soldier. And Scotty is like disoriented, comes to and like sees this other Marine who's also been, fucking like obliterated.
Exactly the way his brother is. So he can, it's a mental F up really. That he can see almost exactly the way that his brother died, and this weighs on him, and really
it weighs on him, but he won't like really admit that it weighs on him. That's the thing, is like you can see it on his face, and this is like literally the only time he really gets emotional during the documentary that you see him get emotional. But like he still refuses to admit like he has any trauma,
But immediately afterwards, he just leans hard on sex.
Oh, he says like, as soon as I get out of the Marines, I just need to fuck, and I fuck everything, and I'm fucking all the time.
He was like, I always check that my penis is there, because I know if I get out of this and my penis is still working, then what I'm going to do for the rest of my life is have sex.
Yeah.
And you know what? Scotty did it.
And he did it. He did it. He made that promise to Jesus, and he said,
he said.
and he did, he goes back to LA after he gets out of the Marines and gets a job at this gas station, the famed gas station,
the Hollywood gas station.
Yes,
that we see in Hollywood.
Yeah, he gets like a name tag that says Scotty on it,
which is such a
it's very like the Ryan Murphy show. Like I keep thinking about it, right? Like I really want to go. We should watch that after this.
We should watch
record.
This after.
We're gonna eat pizza after this.
We're gonna have some pizza. We've already planned this out.
Yeah. So his first ever trick though is he's working at this gas station, and Walter Pigeon, the actor, comes driving up in this really nice, expensive Lincoln. So like the guy knows, like Scotty knows that he recognizes him, right? Even though the guy's trying to act like a little bit discreet about it.
But he pretends he doesn't know who he is.
I know.
He's like Walter Pigeon, but
he's like, who?
Who is you?
I don't know. So Walter Pigeon like offers him $20. He says, if you come with me, I'll give you $20. And so he gets in the car and they drive off, and Walter takes him to this house, like this big mansion of somebody else, another actor, Jacques Potts.
Jacques Potts. So
he's like a hat maker for the stars, is what I think.
And both these men were married too, but their wives were out of town. But they were like together.
So like so Scotty comes to this mansion, and they basically have him get naked, and like again, it's not in a weird like perverted way.
They're just like swim at the pool.
They're like, it's really hot. You want to go swimming? There's no need for swim trunks. Go ahead. And they all get naked. Like Walter and I'm going to call him Jack because they say he's Jack in the book. Walter and Jack basically like lounge out and just watch Scotty, swim. Scotty's got a great body, and Scotty knows it. Scotty's like, I'm this plaything that they're watching, and I really liked being this center of attention for them.
He liked that. I think
absolutely.
He liked that a lot.
Absolutely. He was the perfect person to like fall into this life, right? Because he did really enjoy all of these aspects. And so they watch him, and then they all, go inside and they start blowing each other and having sex. And that's his first foray into this lifestyle.
There's a lot of fellatio in this book, let me tell you.
Oh, everybody's sucking dick.
Everybody's blowing
There's a lot
everybody.
of like, I won't fuck, but I'll suck dick, right?
Or I won't suck dick, but I want my dick sucked.
$20 or $20.
Oh yeah, I meant to make that. No, because literally he got paid $20, and that's like the going rate for this thing.
So
this is
every
where it started
dollar-
out. I'm
every-
straight, but $20 is $20.
Every dollar is $14. I did the math here. Okay, so what did we say? 20? Okay, so 20 times 14, that was like almost $300. $280 is how much they were making per thing, right? So he like really enjoys this experience. He makes a lot of money, and he goes home, and he's pretty okay with it. He has this living girlfriend at the time, Betty, who he literally keeps for the rest of his life, or rest of her life, right? It's this living girlfriend, but he like kind of not trashes her. He says he loves her throughout the whole book, right? That she's like part of him, but he says their relationship is so dull, and they just like don't have the greatest relationship.
I think they had probably a lot of sparks at the beginning.
Yeah,
but it's also like he just got out of the Marines.
Yeah.
He probably really wanted to settle down real quick, but
was
also
not
wanted to also have a lot of sex.
he was not a monogamous guy.
So he thought this was like a big Hannah Montana moment.
Yeah.
Where he could have his wife at home and then just go around and
He says that
do his
she
stuff, you know?
had to have known what was going on because he was always out, and sometimes he would come out, home like after daybreak.
Well,
And
she started taking his hookup calls.
people would call,
Yeah.
these tricks would call their house, and
she'd
she
take
would write
notes.
the messages down, but would never
She was
ask of their
basically a
relationships.
sex secretary.
Kind of was.
So she
but she would
had
like
to have
never
known.
ask questions about it, and she always just accepted it, right? And he was bringing in a paycheck, and he was bringing in a lot of money, and so she never accepted it, and she was kind of being taken care of. They even get pregnant. They have a daughter, Nana, and it seems like a decent life. Like they buy a really nice house on St. Andrews, whatever that is, in Hollywood.
Because Scotty's always about taking care of people. So
Yeah.
no matter what, he was taking care of Betty.
But he does like really drive home that like, yeah, my relationship with Betty was like kind of dull, and it wasn't enough to satisfy
Yeah.
me. So I was out fucking all the time, right? So I wondered, like, do you think he says that she must have known, right? But like, do you think this was an unspoken, like, open relationship? Like, do you think she was out fucking around too?
I feel like people have needs, and I
Yeah.
feel like if she is taking down basically a roll call of people who want to have sex, and let me tell you that this at some point it's not just gay sex. This
Yeah.
is straight sex, lesbian sex,
There's
all kinds of
every
sex.
kind of sex. Everybody was just
So-
sex.
You know, if you've got a platter in front of you, you might sample.
Do you think she took a couple of those numbers? And
I think so.
a couple of those people. She's like,
I-
hey, just meet me at this bar right here.
I think she didn't give. You know, maybe one time or two, she just didn't give the note. She said, "Hey, I'll meet you out here."
Yeah,
And have fun.
There's a couple different options, right? Betty was either a serial killer who was going out and killing people, and
What? Where did that even come from?
in order to like get her anger and frustration out. That's not the likely one. It was just a joke. But she could have also been like not very sexual and just like didn't care about sex, and so like this relationship really worked for her, and she was being taken care of.
She's being taken care of. It could have
she
been
was-
a marriage of convenience.
Or it was like a full open relationship, and she was out doing the same thing, right? And like it was just a don't ask, don't tell policy between the two.
Yes.
But either way, they like stayed together for the rest of their lives. So Scotty's just bringing in a good paycheck all the time. Betty's not really questioning it, and he's like going out and fucking all the time. He says like this is the big benefit to this, to getting to like
Well, because he's getting cash, dick,
he's getting to fuck all the
and
time.
pussy,
And
I guess.
he's also like
So-
fucking for no money all the time, right? He's just like out having sex all the time, which is the only thing he wanted during war, right? He said like let me keep my penis and I will fuck everything.
He's literally living his dream. He's like, I did not know that being a gas station attendant would bring me all of this buffet of people that he
So
gets.
he starts meeting like a bunch of his old Marine buddies, right? And they start coming over to the gas station. Some of them work at the gas station, and the gas station turns into like this really like happening spot for like young
It's some meetup place.
20-year-olds, right? Like 20-something-year-olds, and like they're all just hanging out. And all of these Hollywood stars will come in, and they'll stop, and he'll either go out or what have you. But there's one guy who comes in a really nice car. I think it was like a makeup artist for like Warner Brothers or something like that. Like
Yes.
a big deal at the time. And he points out a blonde guy, one of Scotty's Marine buddies, and Scotty says, okay, it's gonna be $20 for him, okay? And so Scotty goes over before even like asking this guy, right? He goes over to his friend and he says, hey, this guy in this car, just get in the car and go with him. He says in the book, I knew the guy would be fine because he was a Marine, and like if this was an old queen, he calls all of these older ass queens.
Oh yeah, that he wasn't going to be abused, but he was like, all he probably wants is to suck your dick a little bit.
Yeah.
Give you some money.
He just says
and that's
do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah.
So the guy gets in the car and goes, and he doesn't come back until the next morning. But so I would have been like panicked, right? I'd have been like, oh shit, he's been murdered by Betty, and
By Betty.
he's been murdered. But no, he comes back the next day and he's like, Scotty's hanging out with all of his friends, and he goes up to all of his friends and just says,
tells everybody.
He holds up the 20. He's like, he just sucked my dick and I got $20.
Like, this is the easiest $20 I've ever gotten.
And everybody claps for him, right?
So it's literally I'm straight, but $20 is $20.
$20 is 20. There's your joke, baby. Yeah,
I know. It's at the right place.
So this is like the beginning of Scotty turning into a pimp, right? Like he never takes money. He says he never takes money, never
Yes.
takes a cut or anything like that.
He just does tricks. He hooks tricks up.
He's a really good madam, is what it seems like.
And he starts building a really good reputation, right? Especially with the Hollywood elites.
So Hollywood elites will swarm this place, right? Everybody wants gay sex, straight sex, lesbian sex, bisexual sex, right? Just any kind of sex that can be had is everybody's coming to Scotty for, right? And Scotty has like a little black book in his head, full of names and numbers and everything like that, and every other, all of his friends. And so he really only pimps out like his group, his own circle,
group,
right?
yes.
And so he is really good at, like, if somebody comes driving up and they're like, I want a muscular blonde who has, like, I don't know, a freckle. Scotty is like, I know just the guy.
I want a man with long toes. I want a woman with small breasts.
Scotty's like really good at just
Finding the right
getting
person
the right person for this. He's like a
yes.
fantastic matchmaker, right? And he says that, like, I'm just making people happy. This is what people want, right? People just want to feel good, and I'm facilitating that, and so I'm really happy about that. And all my friends are making freaking bank doing this again. Almost $300,
and it's so cool because like you even see the first time that he hooks up a lesbian with another woman, right?
Yeah.
And he's like trying to figure that out because at first it's just gay men, the queens that come by, and that he hooks up, and then he just becomes like a huge boon for the gay community because during this time, this was a dangerous time to be gay. And the Vice Squad was all after you, and he became like a safe, trustworthy haven for the gay people of Hollywood to go and find a quick fix.
He says that his boss never really knew that he was like doing this, but his boss like gave him the keys to the trailer in the back, and so this trailer had like 2 big beds in it,
Well, it wasn't
divided
the
by
boss's,
like a curtain.
It was somebody else's trailer that they gave. They let
Was it?
Scotty
I thought it was
use.
the boss of like the gas station, the owner of the gas station.
No, it was. So the deal was that he could keep the trailer there, and Scotty could use the trailer.
Yeah, to
But
like sleep and stuff.
It becomes so he puts a bedroom on one side with a curtain and a bedroom on the other side with a curtain, and then he's also super ingenious. And then he has like a bathroom that has glory holes in it, and a place where people can peep in on people.
They can be
sucked
peeping toms and pay a
by
little
the
bit of
glory
money
hole.
to go and peep a tom. And like
It seems like everybody knows what's going on.
he
though.
is providing just like any kind of sexual experience that you're
Services,
wanting, right?
yes.
Sexual services, and so he's like king of sex work at this time, really.
Not only that, he also gets into the porn photography business where
He's just doing everything.
yes, where he allowed himself to be photographed having sex with women,
Yeah.
and then sometimes men, and like getting that around, and he's just living the life.
And you know what? Everybody's consenting. Everybody's doing, what they want to do, and everybody's happy, right? So, like, what's the harm here? I did note down a couple. So, like, there's names dropped left and right in this freaking book. Scotty's almost a side character in his own book, is what you said, right?
Yes, he feels like a side character for me. He feels like somebody who loves to be a side character, surrounding himself with his friends, people who are the main characters in their own lives.
Yeah. So we really like can't go into like every single story in the book. So we wrote down like some of the ones that kind of stood out to us, right? There's Cole Porter. I thought Cole Porter's was so funny, right? So Scotty says that Cole Porter just basically loves to suck dick, and he can suck like 20 guys off in a row, and he always swallows, and he just likes the taste of.
He's like bam, bam, bam,
Just
bam.
loves the taste of jizz, right? So Cole Porter has Scotty help him throw this dinner party, and Scotty invites all of these people, right? And everybody shows up and Cole Porter's not there because Cole Porter, right before everybody showed up, like went and like got under the table. And I thought this was leading into like Cole Porter was going to start sucking dicks under the table or something.
Yes.
Like it was going to be some sort of situation like that. No, Cole Porter just wanted to hear everybody bitch about him and wanted to see like who was
his real friends?
who was talking shit about me. And so he like hides under the table and just will like has different signals that he'll like pet Scotty's leg if he wants Scotty to like ask more about him. Like if somebody says, Cole's all right. And Scotty gets a little pat on his leg and he goes, oh, really? Tell me more. Or like moves on to somebody else, right? And then like when everybody leaves, he sucks Scotty's dick and then they wake up together the next day.
It's crazy because Scotty's everybody's best friend.
He is. It seems like it, right? It seems like
he's
just
the
like,
confidant.
Yeah.
You know, that you trust people with. You know, you trust him.
Another one was George Cukor.
This is one of the biggest ones.
I
was like,
loved
what?
this one because I am like so fascinated by George Cukor. George Cukor was like one of Hollywood's elite directors, right? Like
Everybody
all
wanted
of the actors wanted to work
act
with
under
him.
him.
I think one of Marilyn Monroe's right before she died and she got like a new contract, she was able to like pick a director, right? Like she got a choice of directors, one of the powers she got in her contract, and she listed George Cukor as one of her approved directors. Like everybody wanted to work with him. Studios loved him because he would come in he would come in at or under budget and like on time, right? He did A Star Is Born with Judy Garland, and so he shows up at this gas station. He tells Scotty, hey, come tomorrow at noon. So Scotty gets somebody to fill in for him. Scotty shows up at George Cukor's house the next day at noon, and it's this little party. He's like, there's other people there. Katherine Hepburn is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It didn't, honestly, George Cukor plays a huge role in Scotty's life for a while.
Yeah.
And Katherine Hepburn as well. But so are we getting into Katherine Hepburn?
Let's keep it with George Cukor for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So George Cukor, basically, him and Scotty become like regulars. Scotty has a lot of regulars, right? That he actually becomes really big friends with as well. So Scotty is really good friends with George Cukor and Katherine Hepburn going forward. So George Cukor is like super rigid and like not straight laced, but like he's like really to the point. Like he only wants to pay for sex. He only wants to suck a dick off. Like he doesn't really want to have sex.
Because he's a teetotaler too, I think. Too.
He sucks Scotty off, and then he doesn't like to drink. He's like very straight. And so he'll like suck Scotty off and then go take a shower and then come out and like politely ask Scotty to leave, right? Or suggest that he take a shower and he leaves too, right? George Cukor didn't like to like stay up past like 9:30 p.m. And Scotty pretty much says this. George Cukor was only doing this because sex was like an elective for him, right? Like he was getting the urge out and then he was getting to go back and focus on his work because
it was like drinking water. It was something he just did.
He's a major workaholic, so all he wants to do is work, and he just wants to pay for sex to get his rocks off and not have to deal with a relationship, right?
And that's the cool thing about Scotty, and I think that this is one of the reasons he works so well as a trick, is that he really meets everybody's needs no matter how difficult they seem.
Yeah.
You know?
So he meets Katherine Hepburn through George Cukor, and Katherine Hepburn was another really like interesting one. Because I've never followed the career of Katherine Hepburn. Like I knew her and I've seen her movies, but like I never cared to like. I didn't know she was a lesbian.
I was reading this stuff a little ahead of Zach, so I was telling him some of the stuff while it was happening.
Yeah.
And you were like, Katherine Hepburn is not a lesbian.
Because I was like, she was with Spencer Tracy for a long time. She was married. She could not be a lesbian.
And not to be confused with Audrey Hepburn. Just so that people know. Katherine Hepburn, she also did the Queen of Africa.
Yeah.
That's one of her big adventure romance movies. But what was he was? It wasn't rude, but it was like weird. He commented on her skin so much.
Yeah, he was like some of the weird things that he would like fixate on, right? And like, I think George Cukor at one point called her a spoiled bitch, and it was like, "Do you think I'm a spoiled bitch?" And Scotty's like, "No, I don't think you're a spoiled bitch." He said that he really liked her. They were friends for like 50 years.
They were huge friends. Plus, guess who brought pants to Hollywood?
Who brought pants? Oh yeah, she did.
Katherine
I looked
Hepburn.
it up. I googled it. I said, "Who brought pants to Hollywood?" It says Katherine Hepburn. But like over time, Scotty says that he fixed Katherine Hepburn up with like 150 women, and it was so many because she didn't like to like keep the same ones around, so she would rotate through
the roster,
all the time. But there was one girl that this is a little problematic here that Scotty fixed her up with, Barbara, who was like 17 at the time when she was first fixed up with Katherine Hepburn. But Katherine Hepburn was like
enamored.
I wouldn't say in love, but like very much obsessed with her. And this was one of her regular, one of the regular ones that she wanted around, right?
Yes.
She liked her so much. She bought her a car. She would get her all these gifts. And when Katherine Hepburn died, she left $100,000 to Barbara. And Barbara was like keeping in contact with Scotty. I know where we're going. Barbara had kept in contact with Scotty, and so after she got the $100,000, she called Scotty, and she's like, "It was really nice. I'm really happy about this, but like my third husband just died, and I'm super rich because he left me his fortune, so I don't really need the $100,000." I'm like, "Baby, just give it to me.
I know.
I'll take it.
I would want a certificate that said Katherine Hepburn left me $100,000.
Like a T-shirt. We didn't get a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Katherine Hepburn left me $100,000. Katherine Hepburn had been married though, of a short marriage, but then had a really long relationship with Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy, and which was weird. So this one like really confused me because Spencer Tracy was also married his entire life while he was with Katherine Hepburn.
It was very weird because Spencer Tracy was married all of his life, but he lived in one of George Cukor's side houses, basically.
Yeah.
For most of the time, and he allowed this. So this was kind of how Katherine Hepburn, was able to be, basically a semi-open lesbian in Hollywood.
Yeah.
While not being one because of the affair that they had between Spencer Tracy. It's funny because this affair was more acceptable than, her
It's
being a
weird
lesbian.
because, and they were only like pandering to Midwestern people, right? Like this was all of the sexcapades and everything, like this lesbianism, the gay, it was all an open secret in Hollywood. And so like, it's weird that like Spencer Tracy was married, so they had to keep their relationship hush hush. That was also an open secret, but like they still used that as like a publicity tool to like make everybody think that they were
together. But it really wasn't a real thing. But they would hang out a lot. So
but I also think Katherine Hepburn was still. I've still read a lot, and I still think Katherine Hepburn was like enamored by Spencer Tracy and still was like really probably in love with him.
It could have been one of those special parts, but there's one time. So Spencer Tracy. Everybody, George Cukor, Spencer Tracy, Katherine Hepburn, they all hang out a lot with, Scotty Bowers. And Scotty, hooks up people with Katherine Hepburn.
Yeah.
But he gets to be really close friends with Spencer Tracy.
Kind of. He says he really describes Spencer Tracy as like, I thought this was funny. Spencer Tracy is definitely the blow and go guy. Like he would like get really shit faced. He would hook up with a guy and then wake up the next morning and be like, "Oh, dude, what happened? I don't remember any of that. What? Oh, that's crazy."
And I love this. So for people who don't know, during Hollywood, they used to like pair people up. Like, old Hollywood, they used to pair people up a lot. And Spencer Tracy and Katherine Hepburn were paired up for a bunch of movies. But there's this one time that Scotty was hanging out with Spencer Tracy a lot. He got really, really drunk. He was really, really upset. And then he was like, Katherine Hepburn's a bitch.
I know,
She's
right?
so mean to me.
They all talk so much shit about Katherine Hepburn.
And he was like, well, he takes care of, Spencer, gets him in bed, gets him water, stuff like that. And then Spencer's like, please don't leave.
No.
And he was like, okay. So he's like, well, I guess I'll stay the night. And then one thing that leads to another.
Of course it led to another, right?
And this happens several times, but
He's just like, "Oh, bro,
it seems like Spencer
I didn't mean for my dick to slip into your mouth. I don't know."
Yeah, Spencer needs to get like basically completely plastered for this to happen, but I feel like it's definitely a planned out thing.
I feel like, which is such a difference to Katherine Hepburn, right? Like Katherine Hepburn, like everybody, George Cukor, as Katherine Hepburn's really good friend, has to like constantly tell her, "Hey, tone down the lesbianism. You need to be more discreet about this." And Katherine Hepburn's always like, "I'm a lesbian."
Where's my club?
And where's my club? And the studio's like always trying to get Katherine Hepburn to like tone down her lesbianism, be like, be discreet. And Katherine Hepburn's like, "I got pants.
I got pants." But pants become a thing.
Look at this zipper on my pants."
And I love how open she is. But also Spencer Tracy, whatever sexuality he is, he was definitely very like conflicted about that.
I love, Katherine Hepburn was too, because I love that Katherine Hepburn was so open about it, but she still was forced into the closet. Like she still had to go into the closet because, and like she had no support. Nobody was telling her, "It's okay, just be out. Just be out."
Which you couldn't really do at that
No
time.
support. She died in 2003. I mean, she could have come out in the 90s or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. It just, I feel bad for her because I feel like naturally, if nobody had been telling her to like stay in the closet, I feel like she'd have come out. But she had so many people telling her like, be discreet. Don't do this.
You have a lot of instances, especially with old Hollywood, and I think even new Hollywood, where you have these people who are basically openly gay, but not openly gay, you
Yeah.
know? A lot of stuff is protected by either their managers or themselves just being slightly discreet, you know?
Yeah, let's move on to a couple more. So, James Dean, just briefly, Scotty says that he was gay, but I've read a lot on James Dean, and I've always read that, like, because his sexuality is always up in question, right? And everybody pretty much agrees that, like, James Dean was more straight, but would fuck anything to get, like, wherever he needed to get, right? Like, if he needed a movie, if he needed anything, like, he would fuck something. So, like, whether you want to call that bi or whatever, like, he didn't really give a shit, but, like, he would probably prefer to fuck a woman, right? So I don't know. I think maybe,
I don't know as much as you do about that, but I obviously hear more about his.
he says that James Dean was like a prissy queen, though. Like, it was like really bitchy.
Well, I think he talks about James Dean the worst in this book than he's talked about anybody else.
Because I think James Dean was an asshole. Like, let's be real. I think he probably was.
And he was like, James Dean was an asshole. I didn't blame him at all. He's like, I was at a party with James Dean.
Yeah.
And he just smoked a cigarette and just put it on the floor and
he
he stamped it out for no fucking reason.
And Rock Hudson like hated James Dean. So,
Which is funny because I read something before we read this book that
Yeah.
Rock Hudson was like, after James Dean died, that he was like happy that James Dean died. But I feel like it sounds so bad.
that's so terrible.
But this provided some context because it sounded like, which you should never be happy that anybody meets a fate like this. But it sounded like, especially on the set of what is
Giant.
that? The Giant.
Mm-hmm. Not The Giant, baby. He will not watch this movie with me. Giant is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie.
I will watch it with you. I will watch it.
It's a long ass movie.
It
How long that movie?
I've already watched half of it, so we'll start halfway through.
Fantastic. Imagine watching it, like my very first time ever watching it was on the AMC channel, and they have commercials, so it was even longer. Okay. Try watching an old ass movie on the AMC channel, okay? Or TCM, whatever it was.
TCM. But I found that very interesting in terms of like talking about James Dean.
J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover.
His war on gays, and Scotty says that like he met J. Edgar Hoover one time, right? Mm-hmm. And J. Edgar Hoover basically had a boyfriend, and they all fucked around. They all like sucked and fucked and all that, and then J. Edgar Hoover and his boyfriend came down. They went upstairs and they came down, and they were in drag, and they had a drag night.
Which is so. It's crazy how some gay people are the worst allies.
Oh, absolutely.
For ourselves,
the more you hate yourself, the more you're going to attack those who are more like you, right? And who would have accepted him more than anybody.
And what's interesting at this point is he's almost moved past Hollywood in terms of like being trusted enough with people's sexploits that he's starting to get into a very political realm.
He was incredibly discreet, and everybody knew he was discreet, and everybody trusted that he would be discreet. Another one, Edward and Wallace Simpson.
This one blew my mind. I was ahead of you in reading this, and I was like, "Did you know this shit happened?" You're like, "No,
because that's supposed to be one of the like greatest love stories ever." Like he abdicated the throne for her, and she was on her second marriage. She was an American. Like this was a woman who he like abdicated the throne for, and I was like shocked, right?
Which. I still think that they're in love. Like
absolutely.
I don't think that this takes away anything from their romance.
It just like paints like this whole book just paints people as like super diverse, right? And like well rounded, and like that sex or sexuality is not just like spectrum. A or B. It is a spectrum. And like if we didn't have this like conservative view of like everything, that people would just be free and be happy. I think Scotty kind of says in the book that like it's that Wallace Simpson was lesbian and Edward was more gay, and that's why they were together, is because they could live out their.
That they were bi.
He says once that they are bi, and then he also says that they seem more gay and more lesbian. So like,
but like kind of in a purple marriage. I don't know.
Kind of contradicts himself a little bit. But he says like it's a marriage also of, in addition to maybe probably loving each other, that it was also like convenient because they could like go in and like, go to parties and go to orgies and like have sex, and like Wallace was really like dominant, and they could do all of this because they were the perfect couple. Each other was the perfect person to do that with, right?
Yes, and he'd get tricks for Wallace. He'd get tricks for Prince Edward.
Yeah,
and the thing is, like, he was very discreet with the way he got tricks for them. And sometimes they'd participate together, sometimes they wouldn't.
I know.
And
Ross Simpson was like suck his dick.
And
Do it.
Sometimes he wanted a woman, sometimes she wanted a man.
Yeah.
And it was like very freeing.
It's a cool relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like that's like if that's what you both are into and you found each other, like freaking all right, man. Good for you. You know, that's pretty.
I know. I feel like I want to hear about other accounts of this too. And it'd be kind of cool to explore the whole entirety of the relationship between Prince Edward and Wallis Simpson.
I think so too. Did you ever watch the Madonna movie that she made about them?
No. Oh, wait, did you make me
It's like
watch
decent,
that?
but like the people in it are really good. All of the Wallace Simpson and Edward stuff are really, really good. I've never made you watch that. No.
But there are so many tricks in this book, and we can't even cover this. If you want to hear about all of the salacious details, I would definitely
just read the book.
That.
Pick up the book, right? Yeah. You can even search it online and search up. But it's like there's everybody's mentioned in this damn book. You know, of course, Rock Hudson is mentioned.
Desi and Lucy.
Desi and Lucy, of course, Rock Hudson. You know, like just go through it and read it. We need to like go back into more of Scotty a little bit though. This is his book. Alfred Kinsey, who did the Kinsey Scale. Apparently, like Scotty Bowers was bringing him a bunch of prostitutes and taking him to orgies and really like letting him into his world so he could come up with his Kinsey Scale.
Have you seen the movie? Mm-mm. It's actually a really good movie.
A movie on Kinsey, the Kinsey Scale.
Yes, we should watch it at some point. It's very interesting the way he like approaches sex overall, and I think that in a lot of ways. I mean, some of his stuff is struck down right now, but like who was doing research like this back then? But he comes to really meet Kinsey more towards the time when he's talking about women and their sex life.
Yeah.
And he like tells Kinsey, hey, I know a lot of people who would love to participate
be part of this, right?
in your entire experiment. And so he hooks him up with a lot of women across the sexuality spectrum, where they can actually like be subjects in his like experiments. Obviously, everything's like above board. They volunteer for this, and it's interesting because like this is, I think people had at this point accepted that gay people were a thing.
Yeah, they're like those people are around,
but I feel like they hadn't accepted as that lesbians were a thing because for the most part, weirdly enough, I think women were desexualized.
Women were definitely desexualized unless they were like just to serve a man, right? But like I don't know, like lesbians have always been a little bit more accepted. You'll always see a lesbian couple in a movie or TV show before you'll see a gay couple,
which is interesting. But it's also they face their own. Special,
Everybody has.
I think,
we all have
types
the
of
struggles, right?
Yeah,
we all have the struggles.
Because I think that in a lot of ways, lesbians can seem more palatable, but at the same time, they don't get the privilege of being men. Yeah. So it's like,
I don't know. We're going to go into Scotty's life a little bit though, because I feel like we've kind of trailed off on all of his tricks and some of the notable ones. In the 70s, this was this was horrible. Like I think the way he kind of. Will maybe touch on something that was really traumatic and then like go right back into sex is very telling. So like again in the documentary, he's like very sure that like none of my sex is tied to trauma. I'm fucking because I like it, which is like true. I do believe that. I believe that he loves it, right? Oh, he's very like complimentary about himself too. He's like, I have a big dick. I have like
a tight body,
fantastic sex drive. I can, shoot buckets, like he's
which I don't doubt.
No,
honestly,
I don't doubt
at
it.
all.
And like, but like he's like very complimentary of himself. But like he always like will bookend a really traumatic experience told very, very briefly. With like more sexcapades, right? He always goes into it. So like in the 70s, his daughter Donna gets pregnant when she's 23 years old, which is the same age that his mother has him and the same age that his brother Don, who Donna's named after, dies, right? So Donna gets pregnant when she's 23. He shows up because again, like he's living like a bunch of different places, right? He like has a bunch of different residences, and one of them is the house in St. Andrews that he still shares with Betty, and so Betty's still living there, and like he like just visits her, every other day.
I like to say that he really sleeps in a lot of different beds, but I feel like if he had a Helix mattress, he would have stayed in one.
So he shows up one day to Betty's house, and his daughter has like this punch buggy is what we called him. Punch buggy, like that he bought her, and the punch buggy's outside the house, and he's like, "Oh, my daughter's here. She's coming to visit her mom. It makes me really happy." He goes in, and Betty's like crying, and so he's like, "What's happening?" And Betty's like, "She's really sick." And they go in. Apparently, Donna had gotten pregnant and had a botched abortion.
Which was illegal at the time.
An illegal botched abortion, and it went terribly wrong, and Donna dies. From this botched
she goes
abortion.
into a coma and she dies, and it's very sad, especially right now. I feel like we'd be remiss to say that in light of like
I think this is we have to really remark on like what's happening today is that I understand that overturning Roe v. Wade doesn't mean like all abortions are illegal and stuff, but it takes it back to state by state, and what's going to happen is that so many abortions are going to become illegal, and it's taking away safe abortion from everybody, right? Like that's not something that somebody's right to their own body is not something that needs to be voted on, right? Our rights to get married is not something that needs to be voted on. And so we're giving it back to the state so everybody can vote on whether somebody can get an abortion or not. Donna dies from an abortion, a back alley abortion, not a safe abortion, not an abortion where she can just go to the hospital and like be taken care of, right? And like having a medical abortion or something like that. She gets a
botched
like in the back of a fucking car abortion, and she dies. And this is what we're going to be returning to. I very much want to drive that point in. But so he very, very briefly talks about this. This is maybe like a full page at most, maybe even less. I would even say less because half of it's like taken up by, the chapter title. And then he immediately goes into talking about how porn was really exploding in the 70s.
Making a breakthrough.
And he's talking about like Deep Throat and Linda Lovelace.
And it's also it's also possible that he hadn't completely gone through his trauma, because he does talk about the fact that he regrets that he's been basically very much elsewhere.
Yeah.
During the entirety of her life.
Well, he says
he's fine. He supported his family financially, but hasn't been there.
Yeah. And he says that like this is something that's so devastating. He does mention that it's pretty devastating on him and Betty, and that after this, like they never have sex again, right? Like
this is the
although
end of
before
their
it's like how much
relationship.
sex did they even have anyway? Because they didn't. He would just like come over and
Anniversaries?
like maybe fuck her a couple times and then like leave. But like he says like now their relationship is pretty much non-existent. They're just like they never have like a full breakup. They just kind of stay together, and she never questions it and just kind of lets him do his own thing and come and go as he pleases. I felt bad for Betty, and I really do hope that she went off and had like her own double life, or she went off and had her own life that he didn't know about and he couldn't write about because he doesn't know it. In the documentary, he like shows all of her nudes too. He like pulls them all out and like her titties are hanging out. He's like, I took this picture of Betty and what are you doing?
Proud.
Betty's titties are all over the TV right now. Did she want her titties all over the TV?
I would be showing your titties all over the TV.
Don't put my titties on the TV.
I'm gonna put your titties on the TV.
No,
but what I think is relevant to just point out at this point is that that Betty, she wasn't his only child.
Yeah.
So he had helped out two couples in the past, one lesbian couple, because they wanted a kid together, and a straight couple where the man was paralyzed from the waist down. He helped both of them out, and his deals with them was that he wouldn't have contact with the children afterwards. Yeah. And he was very proud of that. He was very proud of being
the book title is
happy.
like it's a really great title. First, full
service. Yeah.
He like literally helps people out all the time, right? I think the one person that he maybe, I don't know if I can't even say if he let her down or not. Betty, I can't say if he ever let her down or not because I don't know how she was feeling about any of this. It would have been so great for him to write this book while she was alive and us to get like quotes from her, right? Because I'm like so fascinated on what she was thinking and what her experience was because we're only hearing it through him, and he's like, I know she knew about it. She might not have known about this, but I knew she knew about this, and like we just didn't talk about it.
They never actually like face anything.
Yeah,
and they were married for the rest. They were never
married.
Life.
They were never married.
I mean, they were because I think that.
They were never married.
If you live in the same house for enough time, I think that's kind of as married.
I don't think that they weren't. They weren't.
Well,
it was just never like that.
They were together for about 60 years.
Yeah, they were just together, right? They never had a breakup or anything. He would visit her like almost every day. Okay, in 1977. So like again, the trauma is like quickly followed up with something sexual, and like he quickly goes into sex. So like I think that is a big theme throughout this is like I'll talk about something really traumatic and then go into it. But kind of moving on from that, in 1977, is it called Q Drive? Kew Q Drive.
Are we not? Wait, I have Deep Throat on my notes.
Or you do want to talk about Deep Throat? I just said that
I thought it was kind of cool.
He kind of went into it. Go ahead.
Deep Throat was like the first big like sex movie that happened, and I looked it up, and
It's one of the first pornos I ever watched.
yeah, the actress was really big, and then apparently, so he hooked her up with, she did like a blowjob panel for a bunch of gay men in Hollywood, and he was like, "Why do you guys want a panel with her? You know, doing a blowjob for Hollywood when gay men know how to." I'm sorry, the way that I'm going to say this, but he said gay men know how to suck dick better than anyone else.
Yeah.
But she did good on the panel, and they talked about it around Hollywood, and then she started doing classes for women in Hollywood.
Do you know
on
much
how to
about
suck
Linda
dick.
Lovelace?
I did. This is the most I know.
She pretty much came out and said that all of that time she had a boyfriend who was also her manager, and he was like forcing her into all of this.
I didn't know
and that
that.
she was forced to do the porno. She was forced to do all of these different things, and he was like really abusive and all of these things. So it's something to we'll have to cover her too. Her story is really interesting.
It was more layers than I
They don't-
saw. I see
Scotty
from
does
this
not
book.
talk about
Yeah.
that in this. He doesn't. He doesn't even mention that. So kind of moving on from that, in 1977 on Q Drive, there's this house on Q Drive that like Scotty's in love with. It was
yeah.
it's a really nice house. I think is this in the Hollywood Hills? It has to be, right? It's a really nice house, and it's like surrounded on either side by like 2 empty lots, so it's got space. You know, and Scotty just loves it, and he wants this house so much, and he tells the owner about it all the time, and the owner offers to sell it to him at one point, and Scotty just doesn't have the money for it. But the house goes through different owners, and one of the owners is named Beach. And that's one of his really good friends. So like Scotty's like always friends with the owner of whoever lives there, and is always like doing yard work for him, repairs on the house. He puts in a pool at the house. Like
Beach was the guy in the urn.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he really takes care of like this house, right? And so like him and Beach are really good friends, and there's a guest house. And at one point there's like Scotty stays in the guest house all the time. He's literally always bouncing from place to place. But at one point when he's not staying in this guest house, there's this cinematographer named Nestor Almondres.
Armondres, yeah.
Okay. And he's a cinematographer who's like new in Hollywood and like doing really well, right? And they all become friends. All 3 of them become friends, and they pretty much hang out at this house all the time. Well, so Nestor gets nominated for an Academy Award
For cinematography.
and he's like happy about it, but like kind of like
I'm not gonna win, guys.
he doesn't think he's
not
going
going
to win
to happen
because of the other people. And so like on the night of the Academy Awards, Nestor comes walking into the living room where Beach and Scotty are, and they're like, why the fuck are you not at the Academy Awards? And he's like, I'm not going to win. I'm not going, you know, there's no way I'm going to win against these people. They pretty much take him and like fully dress him, throw him in the car.
They were like, if this was a 2000s teen movie, this
your-
would have been his makeover scene.
This is his
They're like,
makeover
I
scene.
shaved him while the other guy pressed his clothes.
His Chris Perez makeover scene, right? So they get him dressed. Scotty puts him in the car and like races him over to the theater that they're hosting the Academy Awards at. He like it reminds me of like a hospital scene where somebody like drops somebody off at the hospital ER. He like basically
Reminds
like
me of an airport scene.
pushes him out of the car, tells like an attendant there, he's nominated, find him a seat. Scotty races back home, and he arrives just in time to see that Nestor wins the Academy Award. I thought this was really cool that like Scotty wasn't trying to like get into the Academy Awards. He just like took his friend to the Academy Awards and pushed him out and like made him go to this event because he knew it would be special for him.
Beach becomes one of his best friends. He even says, especially in his old age, he's not old age, but like as he gets older, you know, his friendships just solidify.
Yeah.
You know, and
He's just friends with
just like-
everybody, and he's like a good friend. He seems like a really good friend. He seems like he lacks in some places and is a really good friend in other places, because I feel like he does lack a lot with his relationship with Betty. I'm like, because he could have let her go. But again, we don't know her side, and we don't know if this was an arrangement that really did work for her as well.
it seems like he's a better friend than a boyfriend or husband.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. He was really committed to bachelorhood. So like Nestor wins, and so when Nestor dies in 1992, he leaves in his will.
2 houses.
No.
Was it not 2
No,
houses?
you don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, the Oscar.
The Oscar to Scotty.
Sorry,
He
why
leaves his
did-
Oscar to Scotty. So
I don't know. I misspoke.
We're almost there. Okay, so when Beach dies, okay, he leaves the house on Q Drive to Scotty. And not only that, He leaves another house that he owns in Hollywood Hills to Scotty as well. And the stipulation in the will is like, you can sell the Hollywood Hills house, but like the one on the Q Drive, whenever you die, just give it to my godson. My godson can have it, right? Why not give it to your godson first? But he's like giving it to Scotty, and it's like Scotty's just like being gifted all these houses. He just really like formed these really great relationships with people, and people just liked him so much. They're leaving him fucking houses.
It's super refreshing to see this because like throughout the book that he's so giving all the time to everybody, and he never expects anything back, except for maybe a trick.
And he could not be telling us that he does, right?
But like, this is all his
everybody
opinion,
that has quoted him either too, like outside of the book and everything, they don't have nothing but nice things to say about Scotty. Everybody always says that Scotty was such a nice guy and that he was so good to everybody and really checked in on people. And then people, obviously, that's what you got to do. And people are leaving your houses and stuff, right?
Okay.
This
We're
house,
gonna be checking in on all
like
our friends.
$1 million.
Just kidding.
This is like $1 million house. The house that he does sell, it didn't. He made a good chunk of change, but like not a whole bunch because there were so much back taxes and stuff like that. You got to pay your taxes, people. So he gets this house during the 80s. I guess we'll kind of go down to a somber note now. During the 80s, the AIDS epidemic happens, right?
Yeah, so his tricking and his trickery,
everything slows down.
Is slowing down, and he's trying to be very careful about how he hooks people up. And then he, at some point, realizes that he can't do it anymore with a conscience.
Especially not as much as it was happening. Like all of the orgies and sexual freedom and like sexual liaisons that everybody was so just open secreted about. Those really come to a halt because of everything that's happening. I do appreciate that Scotty says in this that it wasn't just the gay community he was ravaging. It was everybody. Like it was a whole generation that this epidemic was wiping out. And he himself lost a bunch of people. Rock Hudson, he like knew Rock Hudson pretty well and like saw Rock Hudson a lot. And Rock Hudson was one of the biggest ones that really like drove it home for him.
He also knew and tricked Anthony Perkins.
Yes.
Who also died of AIDS, and he tricked him pretty close to the end of his life too.
Yeah. So it was like a big deal. It was a big, and I think this happened for like everybody at that time, not just Scotty who knew a bunch of people, but like everybody was losing people to this horrible, horrible thing. I think what?
Well, I was gonna say this was kind of the end of his bachelorhood,
and this kind of like. I don't know if he would have committed to anybody had this not happened, right? Because he meets this singer named Lois, like a cabaret singer, and she and him move in together and get married, and they live in his house on Q Drive.
Yes. Which starts
fucking weird, man. Fucking weird. Again, Betty could have been completely okay with all this. He says that Betty didn't know anything about Lois and didn't know that he was off living with Lois and like married to another person. And that he was still visiting Betty like almost every day, but Lois knew everything about Betty, and it's just so weird. It's like, why not just like, what was the reason for keeping the secret either, right?
I don't know, but he still visits Betty every day, and then eventually, unfortunately, Betty slips and falls. She breaks her hip, and he takes her in. She goes through recovery, but he realized that
she can't really take care of herself.
She can't really take care of herself, so he puts her up in a home.
Yeah.
And eventually she dies of pneumonia.
Yeah. So she dies.
At like 87 years old.
Not super long after that. His own mother dies. And back in Illinois, he's still taking care of his baby sister, sending her money all the time. Like he does take care of people, right?
Yes.
He may not like be the best with some of the relationships like Betty. I'm the Betty champion. I'm gonna be the Betty champion. But like he does take care of everybody and make sure they're taken care of. Like he wasn't just gonna leave Betty in the gutter, right? He found her adequate care and all of that.
It's interesting with Lois because we don't get this much in the book. But in the documentary
is
we
so
do.
funny. This is kind of where we have to like transition to the documentary, I guess.
Yes.
Because like
the documentary takes place after the book.
After the book is released, she doesn't know anything about his trickeries or anything like that. She didn't
any
know
of his gay sex. She didn't know any of that.
She didn't even know about the pimping and stuff. She didn't know about that stuff until the book came out, and she was hearing everything about it, but like refused to read it.
She's like, I'm not going to read it.
I'm not going to read it.
I didn't know him back then.
I don't know if I would have been okay with the gay stuff.
If I knew this back then, I might not have married him.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn.
But he spends his later years like he's just This is like where it really reminds me of Grey Gardens. He just like spends all of his time just like going through the hordes of stuff that he has accumulated over the years. All of his houses are basically storage units. He's got storage units. He's got cars. He's got all this stuff. He spends his time just walking around fixing things. He visits like everybody. Every other scene he's visiting a friend.
He bartends.
He's still
bartending.
He's still like having multiple. There were like 2 parties just for Scotty. Were those both birthday parties?
Those birthday parties where these hot men come out with
one of them. They brought a penis cake.
Yeah, and they're carrying a penis cake where he
Yeah.
blows it out, and another one where it's because people used to call him on the phone.
Yeah.
It's a penis on the phone receiver.
Oh, a penis on the phone receiver, and then
phone
like a pair
receiver.
of tits right in front of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like he's just like celebrated, and like people know him, and he's just Scotty. He's around town. I love that he is so invested in going around and checking on everybody. He's like constantly visiting all of his Marine people. And like this could have just been for the documentary. We don't know if he was doing that every day. But it seems like he was. That he was like the person who really did check up on you. Like if you want a friend who was going to literally check up on you all the time and make sure you were good and like come over to your house, have tea, talk about the old days, that was Scotty. And he was doing that with all of his friends that were still around.
What I really liked about, which I don't think I got much in the book, about the documentary is that somebody confronts him at a signing and he says, what about these people's family?
This
what about all
kind
of
of
this?
what I wanted to get into. Is like, what do you think about that? It's like, okay, so he writes this book He writes this book full service that basically like exposes everybody, right? All of his tricks, everything, like all of this black book that he had in his head. He like writes it down, and like, what do you think about that? What do you think about outing people after they're dead and they can't really defend themselves?
I think he had a really good answer. He said, these people in the book, they might not have been, putting out a press release about this stuff, but in Hollywood, they were open, and all I'm doing is talking about them now that they're gone. There are a couple names in the book that he refuses to say anything about because those people specifically told him never to mention his name.
There's a few people he like lists as my buddy or something like that. And, like, doesn't really exactly.
Or he's like, hey, I'm going to call them a different name because they specifically told me not to do this. But I think that in a way, and this is my personal, it's not the most comfortable of situations. And I think that in some ways, maybe he definitely went over the line or towed the line. But at the same time, he's telling stories that I believe a lot of these people would have liked to have been told, and that during their lifetime,
because they didn't tell them though. They didn't tell
during their
those
lifetime,
stories.
they never got the opportunity to do that,
or they chose not to. That's the thing, is like these people chose not to say these stories, whether it was fear of coming out or the fear of this or that they just didn't want to. And I do think there's a couple different ways to look at it here, right? It's like he did wait till everybody was dead before he did this, so that they don't really have to, like, if they didn't want to come out, they don't have to deal with it, right? And I guess that just their kids, it's like, I guess your mom was a lesbian, I'm sorry. But also, it's a way to, it can kind of read like trash, a tabloid, something like that. But at the same time, this was the reality. These people were gay, lesbian, bi. These people were sexually free. They were
real people.
They were real people. And when is it time to quit pretending like everybody was just straight and living a heteronormative lifestyle, right? Like, when is it okay to say, no, actually, this was the truth? You think that that gay is a new thing? Like, everybody likes to be like, oh, why is gay shoved down our throats all the time? No, gay people were already around, right? These people were
been here for so long, and this is proof that we've all been here for so long. And that's not to say that these people in a different era wouldn't have been. They would have been able to be out.
Katherine Hepburn, she would have totally been out.
She would have totally been out.
She got her pants. They'd have been all the way up here. Her pants would have been all the way up here. Okay, she'd have had mom jeans, lesbian jeans.
She was Gen Z before Gen Z, but and that's not to say that Hollywood is perfect now. I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are still concerned about their careers, still concerned about being leading men, leading women, who prefer to keep their lives more discreet.
Yeah, absolutely.
New Hollywood and old Hollywood, there is still some correlation there, but that doesn't mean that eventually, or even nowadays, if those people were around now that they wouldn't have been open. And I love being able to read about people like me.
And recognize it, right? And like us be able to recognize it. Do you think that he told the truth, the complete, total truth in this book?
No, I mean,
Do you not?
because
He doesn't-
one, time passes.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to be perfect, and I think that's fine. That's human error. Two, I think that he chose to lean on the positive,
Yeah.
rather than the negative.
True.
So I'm sure there's a lot of negative stuff that happened. You know, there's had to have been some incidents that happened during these tricks.
Yeah.
and we don't hear about that. So
He doesn't strike me as a liar, though. So, if anything, I think he probably just omitted.
Yes.
Because he doesn't strike me as a liar. He doesn't strike me as somebody who's really out for attention in a way that's like he wants to be famous or anything like that, right? I think he likes attention, but I don't think in that way. I don't think
Yeah.
he had like an objective with this. And I think the book kind of just like, if all of it's true, it just shines light on like something that everybody already knew, but that Middle America like shut their eyes to, and everybody else had to shut their eyes to like please Middle America, right? But like this was real life. This was real life, and it was something that was like pretty out and open until a certain point in time when Middle America just like could not bear it.
I think that
And everybody got shoved into the damn closet.
we can see that he loved to be needed during
Yeah.
this time, and in a way, his book is. I mean, we've been covering a lot of gay Hollywood lately, but it's gay Hollywood.
It is the book.
It's gay history.
The book is a log. The book is a symbol of pride for him and all of the ways he was able to help people. That's how I take it. He never victimizes himself in anything. He never like really victimizes anybody. He kind of just like shoots it straight, and he's always taking responsibility. And sometimes that's to a fault, like with the sexual abuse situations. I think there's no reason for him to take responsibility for stuff like that. But like, I think that's just the way he lived life, and it's a perfect portrait of who he was and how he viewed life. And in that way, I think the book is pretty successful.
Honestly, I enjoyed the book
I did
a
too.
lot.
More than documentary. Documentary is okay.
The documentary was okay. I think it's worth the watch, but you're gonna get the juicy stuff from the book.
Absolutely. I'd highly recommend reading it. Full service, Scotty Bowers.
Scotty Bowers and with Lionel Friedberg. Lionel Friedberg.
What were you looking at?
I don't know.
He looked in the closet door. There's a camera over there. My goodness. Well, baby, that was the story of Scotty Bowers.
The very eventful story of Scotty
I
Bowers.
think Scotty Bowers had quite an eventful life.
I know
think
he
was-
had a full life, full of a lot.
he lived the life that he wanted, and I think that's all any of us can really like set out to achieve.
I feel like even by his age, he lived a fuller life than me.
Oh, yeah.
He was.
Well, duh, baby. He had a fuller life than you. You're 20.
Do you think that he was an extrovert?
Did you read the book? Of course he was an extrovert. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I got some introvert vibes. I'm just kidding.
Whatever. Well, stay tuned Monday. We're going to be covering the Amityville horror story. Fact or fiction, hoax or real life? I don't know. We'll go through it all.
But more spooks, less sex.
A little bit less sexy. Yeah, there's still sex scene in there. Amityville horror.
With the ghosts.
The ghosties. Ghosty sex scene.
The ghost of Scotty Bowers.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Adios.